My name's Marcus. I'm 30, single, and to be honest, a bit of a loner. I've got a few close friends, but my social life is pretty low-key. Most of my time is spent working at a tech company, playing video games, and hanging out with friends when I can. Nothing too exciting. One of those friends is Peter. We met a few years ago at a concert, and over time we became good enough buddies to grab drinks or go to the occasional party. Peter's a cool guy, but he's a lot younger than me, just 19. Still, we clicked. But this story isn't about Peter. This is about his mom, Laura. I didn't know her that well, but I'd seen her a few times when I hung out at Peter's house. She was in her late 40s, but she didn't look it. She was a total knockout, to be honest. Not that I ever thought about her that way. She was just Peter's mom, after all. But recently, things had gotten complicated for her. Peter called me one evening after work sounding a little bit off. His voice wasn't its usual upbeat self. "Hey, Marcus, can you do me a favor?" he asked, hesitating for a second. "Yeah, sure. What's up?" I replied. I was in a good mood, just about to crack open a cold one. But when Peter asks for help, it's not like he does it often. So I was more than happy to listen. My mom, she's not doing well. She's really taking this whole divorce thing hard, and she's been locked up in the house all day. I don't think she'll leave for anything, but she's really upset about it. I don't want her driving right now. Can you pick her up? She refuses to take a cab. I could tell by his tone that this wasn't just a small favor. Peter sounded worried, and that was enough to make me drop whatever I was doing. I didn't think twice. I agreed without hesitation. "Of course, man. Where is she?" Peter gave me the address and I grabbed my keys. I hadn't seen Laura in a few weeks, but I knew she was going through a rough time. I didn't know the details of her divorce, but I knew that it had been messy. She and her husband had been together for years, and from what I'd heard, it wasn't exactly a happy ending. The last thing anyone needs after something like that is to feel alone, especially when you've been with someone for so long. When I got to her place, I parked and rang the doorbell. She opened the door and right away I could see it in her eyes. It was more than just sadness. There was a deep, quiet pain there. I could tell she wasn't okay. And that's when I realized how much harder things were for her than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. It was about the end of a chapter in her life that she had probably invested everything in. "Hi, Marcus," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for doing this." "No problem, Laura," I replied, giving her a reassuring smile. "Let's get you home." We didn't talk much on the way there. The silence in the car was heavy, almost uncomfortable, but I didn't know what to say. I wasn't her therapist. I wasn't sure what she needed, but I knew she needed someone to listen, and that's exactly what I did. The drive was awkward to say the least. I wasn't used to seeing Laura like this, so quiet, so broken. She'd always seemed so put together when I'd seen her before, always smiling, always the professional mom. But now it was like a different person had replaced her. There was no denying the pain in her eyes. The silence stretched between us, and the only sound was the hum of the engine as we drove down the road. I glanced over at her a few times, trying to figure out how to break the ice. But honestly, I had no idea what to say. I wasn't good at these things. Peter was the one who usually took care of emotional stuff. Me, I just listened, or at least tried to. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she needed something more right now, more than just a ride home. So I finally said, trying to ease the tension, "How have you been holding up?" She turned her head toward me, and I could see the sadness wash over her face again. She took a deep breath like she was trying to steady herself before speaking. "Honestly, not well," she admitted quietly. This divorce has been harder than I expected. I thought I'd be fine, but I feel so lost." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know who I am without him." I didn't know what to say to that. What could I say? I wasn't exactly the expert on relationships, especially not broken ones. But I could tell she was carrying a lot more than just the pain of a failed marriage. There was a deeper loneliness there, a kind of emptiness that I wasn't sure how to fill. "I can't imagine what that must feel like," I said softly. "But you know you'll get through it. You're strong." She looked out the window, the wind blowing her hair back. For a moment, it felt like she was trying to distance herself from the conversation. I didn't blame her. Talking about something so raw couldn't have been easy. "I don't feel strong right now," she whispered. "I feel like I've wasted so much time and now I'm too old to start over." I didn't want to argue with her, especially when she sounded so defeated. Instead, I let her talk, hoping that it might help her in some way. I just wish I could be loved again. You know, she continued, almost as if talking to herself. I wish I could feel desired like I matter, but it feels like everything's slipping away. I could hear the bitterness in her voice, the frustration. It hit me hard because, as much as I tried to avoid thinking of her as anything other than Peter's mom, she was still a woman who had been hurt, who had her own desires and needs that weren't being met right now. You matter, Laura, I said before I could stop myself. You're a great person. Anyone who gets to know you can see that. She turned her head to look at me, her eyes narrowing slightly, almost searching for something in my face. It felt like she was weighing my words, but I couldn't quite figure out what she was thinking. There was a long pause before she spoke again. Thanks, Marcus, she said, her voice quieter now. You're kind, but it's not enough. I need more. I need to feel something again. I could see it in her eyes now, the need, the vulnerability, and before I could stop myself, I felt a shift inside me. I wasn't sure what to do with it. I wasn't prepared for this. I hadn't expected her to open up like this. And now I didn't know how to handle it. The car slowed as we neared her place, and she let out a deep sigh, almost like a release. I wasn't sure if it was because she was relieved to be home or if the weight of the conversation had finally settled in her chest. Thank you for listening, Marcus, she said, her voice soft. It's been a while since anyone's really listened. I wasn't sure what to say to that. Part of me wanted to reach out to comfort her somehow, but I wasn't sure if that was my place. But another part of me, this unexpected part, felt like I wanted to be closer to her. It wasn't just pity or sympathy. There was something else there, something that felt like connection. We pulled into her driveway and the silence returned. I didn't know how to leave things on this note, but I wasn't sure what else to say. As I put the car in park, Laura turned to face me again, her eyes searching mine. Marcus, you've been a good friend to Peter and to me. You don't know how much that means. I smiled, though it felt a little forced. Anytime, Laura, you're welcome. She nodded slowly, and then there was this lingering moment between us. I wasn't sure if it was just the aftermath of a heavy conversation or if something more was shifting, something I wasn't ready to face yet. But for the rest of the ride home, I couldn't shake the feeling that things between us were changing. The next few days were strange. I tried not to overthink the ride home with Laura, but it lingered in the back of my mind. Every time I saw Peter or heard from him, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between me and his mom. But I pushed those thoughts aside. After all, I was just trying to be a good friend. That's all. This was right. But then came the text. It was late on a Thursday evening when my phone buzzed with a message from Laura. My thumb hovered over the screen, unsure of what to expect. It was just a simple message. Can we talk tomorrow? I need someone to listen. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't sure what was going on with her, but if she needed someone to talk to, I was willing to be there. I quickly replied, Of course. What time works for you? She responded almost immediately, her message short but clear. How about 800 p? I'll be home. Thanks, Marcus. That was it. My stomach did a weird flip, and for a moment I considered backing out, but I didn't. I knew Laura needed someone who wasn't emotionally tied to her in a way that would cloud the conversation. Peter had his own baggage, and I didn't want to add to that. When I arrived at her house that night, I was nervous, not knowing what to expect. I rang the doorbell and waited, my mind racing with possibilities. What could she need to talk about now? Was she still struggling with the divorce, or was it something else? She opened the door looking a little more put together than the last time I saw her, but there was still something off about her. Her eyes had a tired, almost distant look. Hey, she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. Thanks for coming. No problem, I replied, trying to keep things casual as I followed her into the living room. What's going on? She gestured for me to sit on the couch. Her movements were slower than usual, more deliberate. She seemed like she had something important to say, but I wasn't sure what. Once I sat down, she took a deep breath, staring down at her hands before speaking. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other night. She began, her voice low and hesitant, and I've realized I need more than just someone to listen to me. I wasn't sure where this was going, but my stomach tightened with some unfamiliar feeling. What do you mean? I asked carefully. She sat down across from me, folding her legs under her as she looked at me. I don't want to sound crazy or desperate, but I think I've been really lonely for a long time now. She hesitated, her gaze falling to the floor as if she couldn't quite meet my eyes. And I'm tired of feeling invisible. I stayed quiet, letting her talk. I could tell she was struggling with something deeper, but I didn't want to rush her. Losing my marriage, losing the life I thought I had, it's all just changed everything, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. I didn't think I'd be here at 48, wondering if I'll ever find someone who sees me again. I wasn't sure what to say. I felt bad for her, really. She wasn't just talking about her failed marriage. She was talking about her identity, her self-worth. I couldn't imagine how tough that must have been. I know I'm not exactly in a place to start something with anyone right now, she added quickly, as if trying to justify her vulnerability. But I can't help but feel like I need something more than just being a mom or a divorcee. I need to feel alive again. There it was, the truth I'd been feeling but hadn't quite acknowledged. She wasn't just grieving her marriage. She was grieving herself too. Before I could respond, she stood up and started pacing. "I'm sorry," she said, running her hands through her hair. "I'm not making sense, am I?" "No, you're making sense," I said, standing up slowly. "I get it. You've been through a lot. I don't know what I'm doing," she said, her voice strained. "I just feel so empty." She stopped pacing and turned to face me, her expression searching. "I don't want to be alone anymore, Marcus." There was a silence between us, thick and charged. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for something, but I couldn't quite figure out what. It was in that moment, when I looked at her, really looked at her, that I saw it, the pain, the need, and something else, a subtle pull that I couldn't ignore. It was a quiet, almost unspoken invitation, but I wasn't sure how to respond. She took a small step toward me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'm asking for, Marcus, but I need someone, even if it's just for tonight." I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding in my chest, and everything inside me was telling me to back away, to keep things safe. But when I looked at her, standing there vulnerable and searching for something, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. For a long moment, the air between us was charged with tension. Neither of us said anything. I wasn't sure what to do next, but as I looked in her eyes, I knew things weren't going to stay the same anymore. The silence between us was heavy, thick with tension. Laura was standing just a few feet away, her body language closed yet somehow inviting. It was as if she was waiting for me to make the first move, but I wasn't sure what that move should be. She had made herself vulnerable more than I was used to seeing. The weight of her words, her honesty about feeling lost and invisible, stuck with me. But what she was asking now, it was dangerous, at least that's what my mind kept telling me. "I don't know what you want from me, Laura," I finally said, my voice quieter than I intended. "You're going through a lot, and I'm happy to listen, but I think you need more than just someone to talk to." She nodded, her eyes still locked on mine. "I know," she whispered. "I've been so lonely for so long, Marcus. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I need to feel wanted. I need to feel like I matter." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a fire behind it now, a desperate need. I could feel the pull of her words, the ache in her eyes, and it was hard not to respond. But I had to be careful. I had to draw a line. She wasn't just any woman. She was Peter's mom. She was the one who had been through hell recently, and I couldn't let myself get wrapped up in this. "Laura," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "you're an amazing person. You don't need to settle for something you might regret. I don't want to take advantage of this moment of what you're going through." She stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "I don't want to regret anything," she said softly. "I just want to feel something. Anything, Marcus. I just don't want to feel like I'm invisible anymore." Her words were raw, and I saw how much pain was in them. This wasn't just about a physical need. It was about her reclaiming herself after a lifetime of feeling unseen, of giving so much of herself away and getting nothing in return. And yet the thought of crossing that line, of making this something more, made my stomach churn. I wasn't sure if I was the right person to help her through this. I wasn't even sure if I was the right person to help her get over it. "You're not invisible," I said quietly, my heart pounding. "But this can't be what you want." "Not really. You need time. Time to heal." She looked at me with a mixture of frustration and longing. "Do you really think I'm going to heal by just waiting around?" she asked. Do you think time will fix what he did to me? The words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just seeing the vulnerable woman in front of me anymore. I was seeing a woman who had been betrayed, who had her world turned upside down, and who didn't know how to put the pieces back together. She had given everything to someone who didn't deserve it. And now she was left with nothing but the aftermath of that pain. No, I don't, I admitted. But that's why I can't be the one to fill that hole for you. I can't be the one to make everything better. She nodded slowly as though she understood, but the look in her eyes suggested she wasn't ready to give up. I know you're right, she said quietly, looking down at her hands. But sometimes I just want to feel alive again. Like I'm more than just someone's ex-wife or someone's mom. I took a deep breath, running my hand through my hair, unsure what to say next. The urge to comfort her was strong, and part of me wanted to give in to the moment, but I couldn't. It wasn't just about what I wanted. It was about what was best for her. Maybe we both need some space, I suggested, my voice quiet but firm. You need time to figure things out to heal, and I need time to figure out how I can be there for you without crossing any lines. For a moment, she just stood there looking at me. Then almost imperceptibly, her shoulders relaxed and the tension in her face faded. Yeah, I think you're right, she said softly. I've been pushing too hard, haven't I? I nodded, relieved that she seemed to understand. It's okay. I'm here for you, but let's take it slow. All right. No rushing into anything. Not now. Not until you're sure what you really need. She gave a small, almost sad smile. I don't know what I need yet, but I'm glad you're here, Marcus. I really am. And with that, the moment passed. The heavy air between us lightened just a little, but I knew that things weren't over. Laura wasn't done processing what she was going through, and I wasn't done questioning whether or not I had done the right thing by getting involved at all. I left her house that night feeling unsettled. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but one thing was clear: things between Laura and me were different now. Whether we acknowledged it or not, we had crossed a line. The question now was how we were going to move forward. It had been a week since that night, a week of uncertainty, of avoiding each other's gaze whenever we saw each other. But there was no avoiding the truth. Things had changed. What happened between me and Laura couldn't be undone, but it didn't feel like something I could just ignore either. Every time I thought about it, I was left with this nagging feeling in my chest, a sense that I had stepped into a place I couldn't come back from, no matter how hard I tried. It was Sunday afternoon when I got the call from Peter. I hadn't spoken to him much since the whole situation had unfolded, but he was a good friend, and I knew he was worried about his mom. He'd mentioned how hard things had been for her, and I hadn't been the greatest support, even though I'd meant well. Hey, Marcus, you have a minute to talk. Peter's voice was steady, but there was something in it. Something that told me he knew more than he was letting on. Yeah, of course. What's up? There was a long pause before he spoke again. Look, I know things have been weird between all of us, but I need you to talk to her. I don't think she's doing okay. She hasn't been the same, and I think she's been holding back a lot. I think she needs closure, or maybe she needs something else. His words hung there heavy with unspoken meaning. It didn't take a genius to figure out what he was really asking. Peter wanted me to fix things. He wanted me to make sure his mom was all right, even if it meant putting aside everything that had happened between us. All right, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I'll talk to her. The conversation was brief, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I didn't even know what I was going to say to her, but I couldn't leave things hanging like this. Not when it felt like everything was on the verge of falling apart. I drove to Laura's place. The familiar drive somehow felt heavier than before. The distance between us had been growing, and now I wasn't sure if I was even welcome. But I had to do this. Not just for Peter, but for both of us. When I arrived, Laura was sitting outside on her porch, looking out at the empty street. She didn't seem surprised to see me, though she didn't immediately get up to greet me either. I could tell that she was still working through her emotions. The way her shoulders sagged and her gaze was fixed ahead, distant. Hey, I said, keeping my distance at first. Can we talk? She looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a faint, tired smile. Yeah, I figured you'd come eventually. I took a deep breath and sat down next to her, careful not to get too close. The last thing I wanted was to make things worse, but I wasn't sure how else to approach it. Peter's worried about you. I began, trying to break the silence. He says you've been pulling away. She exhaled slowly, nodding. I know, it's just everything's been too much, Marcus. I'm not the woman I was before all this happened. I've been stuck in this cycle of grief, of anger, and I don't know how to get out of it. Her honesty hit me harder than I expected. Laura was used to putting up walls, to being the strong one, the one who kept everything together. But now she was raw, vulnerable, and I could see how much it was eating her up inside. I know I've been a mess, she continued. But I've also been doing a lot of thinking, and I've realized I don't want to keep making mistakes. I don't want to keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. I don't want to use people, Marcus. I don't want to use you. I sat there for a long moment processing her words. The weight of everything we'd gone through was finally hitting me too. Laura was right. We had crossed a line, and it wasn't just about the physical part anymore. It was about understanding where we both were emotionally and what we needed or didn't need from each other. I'm not going anywhere, I said quietly. But we need to figure out how to fix this, not just for you, but for me too. Laura nodded, wiping away a tear that had fallen down her cheek. I don't want to lose you as a friend. I don't want to lose anyone. I don't think we'll lose each other, I said, reaching out and giving her a reassuring squeeze on the arm. But we have to be honest about what we want, about what we need. There was a long silence, and for a moment we both just sat there, letting the words hang in the air. Finally, Laura turned to me, her expression softer now, less conflicted. I think, uh, I think we're both in a place where we need to focus on ourselves. I need to get my life together. I need to heal. And I think you need to keep being the guy who helps me see what's real. I'm here for you, I said. I'll always be here, Laura. But it's time to put some distance between us. Not because I don't care, but because I want you to be the person you used to be before all of this. She smiled faintly, her eyes still wet, but filled with something I hadn't seen in a while. Peace. I think that's the right call, Marcus. And just like that, the tension that had been building between us began to loosen. The lines had been drawn, and we had both agreed on what needed to happen. We were no longer on the edge of something reckless. We were starting to heal in our own ways, separately, but still together in some distant, quieter way. As I left her house that evening, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Maybe it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Maybe it wasn't the romance we'd once imagined, but it was the right ending for her, for me, and for the life we still had to live. Here's a question for you. If you were Marcus, would you have been able to maintain the same level of restraint in such an emotionally charged situation? Or would you have been tempted to cross the line Laura proposed even momentarily?